And good afternoon, everybody. We are live today. It is Thursday, April 16th, a little after 1 o'clock. It is great to be with you. I'm Ann Vandersteel. Welcome to Steel News. For those of you that wrote checks yesterday to the federal government, shame on you. I don't know how to tell you this, but the Title 26, the IRS, that whole story is yesterday's news. I mean, it is so illegal. It's so egregious. It was never ratified. The entire 26th Amendment was never codified under positive law. So I actually have Joe Bannister, a former criminal investigator for the IRS, and Payman Matahedu with the Freedom Law School stopping by my house tomorrow because they happen to be in West Palm Beach. And so we might actually do a little live tomorrow on this because I feel so badly for everybody that just wrote a check yesterday. Come on, people, wake up. The whole system is rigged. It is all rigged. It is all fake and gay. And I mean, every time you just open up any sort of journalism anywhere, and then you listen to the White House, the stories are never the same. And there's a lot of disinfo, misinfo. And frankly, the critical info is you guys better get right with God, and you better know what this book is right here, this parchment that was published 250 years ago. Nowhere in there does it talk about an IRS or agency government, but I digress because today's story doesn't actually fit neatly into a headline because it sits at the intersection of what we call medicine law and then power. A doctor on the front lines of COVID running urgent care clinics, testing thousands of patients during a global emergency is now fighting for his freedom in federal court. Goodness, I had friends in federal court yesterday and their actual hearing, their sentencing got postponed because the federal government has got their panties in a twist because they don't know what they're doing and they're making a crime out of nothing, which is what these federal governments and agencies do all the time. Dr. Ron Elfenbein was charged with healthcare fraud, and it was tied to how his clinics billed for COVID testing visits, specifically whether those visits were coded at a level that some prosecutors say was too high. A jury convicted him, and he was the first doctor convicted actually at a trial by the Department of Justice for healthcare fraud in billing for office visits in connection with patients seeking the COVID-19 tests. But then something very rare happened. That judge who oversaw the trial overturned that conviction, saying the government failed to prove its case, pointing to the ambiguity in the very billing rules at the center of it all. And then another twist. That's right. A federal appeals court stepped in, reversed that acquittal, and said a jury could have reasonably found him guilty, sending the case back for a new trial. Almost sounds like they're violating double jeopardy, but we'll get to that. So what does this actually mean? Is this a case of fraud during a national crisis, or is this dangerous gray zone? The government just loves to kind of wallow in the gray zone, where medical judgment, regulatory ambiguity, and federal prosecution collide. And more importantly, what does this mean for every doctor who's had to make fast decisions in the chaos of COVID? That's what we're digging into today. Joining me now is Dr. Ron Elfenbein. We're going to call him Dr. Ron. He's an emergency medicine physician with over 2 decades of experience and the owner of multiple urgent care centers in Maryland. Ron found himself at the center of one of the most closely watched COVID-era healthcare fraud cases in the country. It's great to have you here, Ron, because you are, you've been indicted. Whoops, we didn't bring you in properly. You've been indicted, convicted, acquitted, and now you're facing a new trial. The complete hypocrisy of all of this. It's like, show me the man and they'll find the crime. That's what it sounds like to me, Ron.
Well, thanks for having me, Ann. It's good to be here. It's funny you say that because actually the judge that you referenced that wrote that very courageous and very detailed 93-page opinion, which, just to put into perspective, the Supreme Court does not issue 93-page opinions.
Right.
He even said in a pretrial conference, to your point, quote, "This whole thing looks like a case of shoot first and ask questions later," because the government had done little to no investigation before they came after me, which I think was completely politically motivated. Yes, it was a horrific time and a complete roller coaster of emotions that I've had to go through over the last 4 years, where my life has been completely destroyed by the federal government.
You and so many others, like I just said, and one of the 3 people I'm referencing. That's how we got connected on our text messages this morning. Michael Castellero.
Yes.
The agency government to me is a complete sham show. Again, I reference our good paperwork right here that we're supposed to be our guiding principles. I don't see agency government represented anywhere in here. In fact, you actually have a lot to say about that on your website, where you specifically call out the federal government. And I'm going to just pull your website up here because this is your story. And you actually call out the federal government for the fact that they shouldn't be invoking DEI-based frameworks to prioritize people of equity or based on equity over need, which makes total sense to me, because if I'm walking in missing half an arm and there's a guy sitting in there with some flu symptom, I hope you treat me first. I mean, isn't that how it should be, based on need? Or am I just wrong?
So your point is spot on, and I will tell you that this is the first time in I believe in medical history, and I would invite anybody to prove me wrong, that the government stepped in and politicized a cure for a virus that was causing a global pandemic. So we have COVID-19.
Right.
We had a cure, which was the monoclonal antibodies, which I was a big proponent of. I was out there on Fox and CBS and NBC and ABC, Breitbart, every news organization that would have me talking about how wonderful this medicine was and how it would cure people. And it had little to no side effects. And we were the largest supplier of the stuff in the state of Maryland. And frankly, we had 2 sites. I would have had 100 sites if I could have found the staff, because this stuff was curing people and saving lives. The Biden department, the Biden administration steps in and they say, well, we're going to control the distribution. And overnight, what that did was created artificial shortages, because all of a sudden the government said, whereas before you could get it directly from the manufacturer, no problem. The government said, whoa, we're going to control it now. And now all of a sudden you'd ask for 100 doses, you'd get 50 doses. You ask for 80 doses, you'd get 40 doses. And then, to your point, they started injecting quote unquote equity, whatever the hell that means. I still don't understand
Exactly.
what that means.
I don't either.
And they started using that as a criteria. Like,
yeah.
I mean, so Florida is an example, and I use this all the time, but it's the best example I can think of. Florida was having a major outbreak. The government stepped in and did what I just said, that they controlled the distribution, and they started using this ridiculous term equity to determine how they were going to distribute this medicine. And Florida has an elderly population who were dying and at high risk because of their age and their comorbidities. And yet they couldn't get this life-saving medicine because the Biden administration decided to politicize it. It is unconscionable and it is disgusting. And I went on national news and I screamed about it. I yelled about it. And I said, they're going to kill people. And 4 months later, I get indicted with little to no investigation having been done. I believe those two things are related, but I can't prove that.
Oh, I would absolutely say they're related, just like in the case of our friends at Straight Path Ventures, who sat in the Southern District of New York. These are Trump supporters who had a business that was not regulated by the SEC. It was a private pre-IPO investment firm, and fell under no regulations of the SEC. And they were basically asked to submit to a voluntary, not an audit, show us the books. They didn't have to. It was voluntary, but they did it because they're honest business people. And again, show me the man, we'll find the crime. They fabricated crimes. In fact, the reason the sentencing was postponed is because, and this is sort of like your case, it's you're convicted, you're not, you're convicted, you're not. But again, they don't have solid ground that they're standing on, and the law is very specific. Yet they're trying to manufacture and circumvent and rewrite the law, and hoping that the Judge Furman, the same judge that went after President Trump, will, of course, play along with it. And again, when you're in the Southern District of New York, it's like almost as bad as being in Washington, D.C. at some level, right?
Yeah.
So you really aren't submitting to a jury of your peers, as they like to say. So again, I commend you on the effort you made to basically stand in the gap and take care of patients using, I first heard about monoclonal antibodies from Dr. Richard Bartlett. I'm sure you are familiar with him and probably have spoken with him. But again, these are the sort of issues that good doctors came forward, like Dr. Zelenko, personal friend of mine, and transparency, I run his foundation, that brought other options forward that were preventative and also restorative. They were treatments and they were prophylactics. And the federal government said no, because they had their own agenda, whether it was remdesivir or it was the shots, that's how it went. And like you're saying, shortages are a problem. So what was the reality looking like inside an urgent care during the peak demand when you were seeing shortages of products like monoclonal antibodies? What happened?
It was horrible. I mean, it was like, I'll give you a perfect example. So we went from 1 site before the pandemic to 8 sites during the pandemic. We went from, I think, 6 employees before to over 300 at the height of the pandemic. I mean, and this was within a year. It was exponential. And we had our main clinic, what we had sat on a highway, and we opened at 8 a.m. And all this stuff kind of had to be done on the fly because there was no playbook for it. We were the first place in the country, I believe, certainly in the state of Maryland, to work out the drive up testing. because it was the safest way to do it. We were on the front page of the newspaper because of that.
Mhm.
So I don't know that anyone else had come up with that idea before that, and that we just had to come up with the stuff by the seat of our pants. And we opened at 8 a.m. People would start lining up at 4 o'clock in the morning. We had to hire off-duty cops every single day, 7 days a week, because the line, and I actually clocked it, I went and I videotaped it, was over a mile long down this major highway. And then we had to figure out, well, how do we manage all this? Like, people have to go to the bathroom. Where are they going to go to the bathroom? So we had to get,
Oh
porta
my
potties, and
God.
we had to hire people to manage the parking lot because they'd get fights in the parking lot. And then people are in their cars for 6 hours. So, they're getting hot, they need water. So we had to buy bottled water. And how do we hand that out? Like, how do we do all this safely and do it in a way that's good and maintaining that barrier? So we were at some point seeing over 1,000 patients a day. We had to cut the line. We actually were seeing too many people, and we had to actually put a cone at the end of the last car and say no more because we're closed for the day. Now, look, if I was committing fraud and I was just about the money, then I would have been like, bring them on, keep them coming. But that's not what happened. I said, no,
Right.
this isn't safe. This isn't good. We're going to shut the line down. So, the whole thing is just insane. And we were so overwhelmed because that was the demand. We weren't out there advertising. I wasn't pulling people in off the streets. They were showing up because they needed this. People needed to be tested, and then they needed the treatments. And we were the only game in town to offer the treatments that was done in an efficient manner. So we became the largest provider of monoclonal antibodies in the entire state of Maryland. So much so that the federal government actually reached out to me and said, could you open up a site for us with HHS as a partner, Health and Human Services, at FedEx
Right.
Field where the Redskins play football? So I did it. My company, in partnership with HHS and the Maryland Department of Health, we opened up the site. I ran it for over a year. We treated patients, and I had to convince them that we should test people there too, because we could take them right from their car if they were symptomatic and give them their results in 10 minutes because it was a rapid test, and then put them in an infusion chair and cure them of their COVID. And
Mhm.
the government was like, wow, this is a great idea. And then that became the blueprint for the entire nation for treating patients for
Mhm. Mhm.
monoclonal antibodies. Again, like, would you go into business with somebody you think is committing fraud? They approached me.
Right. And I'm showing this on your story right here on your website, drronelfenbein.com, where you detail all of this out very nicely, I might add. You've done a number
Thank you.
of social media and mainstream media. Again, I look at the government, their claim that upcoding COVID visits to higher complexity levels. What does level 4 billing actually mean in practice, and how much discretion do doctors have in coding, particularly when you're just describing a parking lot, a highway with a mile long, trying to get water to people, get bathrooms to people. And the government is, because businesses were being told that their employees had to have shots, they have to be tested, they have to wear masks, stand 6 feet apart, blah, 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 blah. So you're trying to facilitate what agencies are forcing down on corporations and companies, and then those that were scared because they just don't know anything about anything, they were just falling in line. I mean, look, the public is not medically trained. They're going to do what
No.
they're told because that's typically what happens. You trust the man in the white coat and the stethoscope, and if an authority says it, so they knew the manipulation they were creating, yet they went after you because over some coding. Is that a manufactured claim, or is that something that actually can happen? Because Medicare fraud does happen a lot, and let's face it does happen a lot.
100%. But typically, fraud in the medical space involves billing for patients that don't exist. Okay, things that didn't actually happen.
Right.
These right here are the charts. Their names have been redacted of the 5 patients that they charged me with crimes over. Okay,
5
these people
out of how many
5
thousands?
out of over 100,000 that we saw in the time frame of the indictment throughout the entire pandemic is well over 300,000. They
Show
took
me the
5.
man, I'll find the crime. Got it.
100%. And these people are all real human beings. They all exist. In fact, the government called 3 of them at my trial, and they all testified, yes, under oath. Yes, I was seen. Yes, I got tested. Where's the fraud, right? They were seen. They're real people. So at worst, what you're describing and what the government is claiming is a billing dispute. And I would argue to you, Ann, that if you go to the grocery store and you find that they charged you twice for the blueberries that you just bought, what do? Do you call the police and you make a federal crime out of it? Or do you reach out and
Yeah.
say, hey, I think you overcharged me by accident?
Right.
Of course you're going to do the latter. But the
Sure.
government never gave me that opportunity. They just came out of nowhere and said, you are a criminal and we indicted you. And just so you understand, the indictment, two of the things in the indictment basically said that we weren't spending enough time with our patients, which is completely immaterial. And
Yep.
this was medically unnecessary. Under oath, their own expert, quote unquote expert, by the way, testified that time is irrelevant, as I just said, and they were all medically necessary. So
And who was the expert?
I'm
Who was
sorry.
the expert, Dr. Ron?
I don't want to name him personally, but he's a guy that's testified hundreds of times for the federal government, and he was so
For
bad.
what age? Is he a physician or does he come from an agency?
No. He's not even a coder. And that's another thing. The government, there's people that do this for a living. We had a professional coding agency that worked for us that looked at our charts. The government never, ever hired a professional coder to look through these charts. They just had government lawyers do it. And they didn't even do it until after they indicted me, which is miraculous or crazy, because the only way to know what the coding level is supported by is what's in the charts. And the government didn't have the charts until after they indicted me. And I know that because they subpoenaed them from me after they charged me with crimes. I know. It's crazy, right?
Did everybody just hear what you said? They indicted you before they knew what was in the charts, and yet they claimed that you were improperly coding based on what I mean. You can't. The codes are directly related to the diagnoses in the chart. So they're now telling you that you improperly coded things or upcoded things, but they had no idea what the diagnoses were in the chart. I mean, this is what's so insane about all this. And then you have to, let's talk about HIPAA. You know, at what point do they just get to run right over HIPAA to come after you? What, did they break any laws there?
Oh my God. So during the trial, it was so bad that the judge had to repeatedly excoriate the government and say, stop breaking the law. Quote, stop breaking the law. I have a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine. We've known them for years. We have holidays together with our families and everything. She sat in the gallery the whole trial. They put up her personal information amongst thousands of people. And the judge, somebody, I don't know who, somebody complained to the judge, and the judge had to say, hey, government, stop violating the law. Both federal and state laws they were violating, by the way. And no repercussions, no big deal. Just the judge said, hey, you got to stop breaking the law. They were doing it right and left. Personal information. In fact, they put up my daughter's name and our home address because my daughter had been a patient seen at our clinic. And so they get away with it. It's amazing to me. But these 5 charts, I just want to emphasize the fact that, like, again, these are real people. And no one's ever claimed that because they can't, that these people don't exist and that we were making stuff up, because that's not true. And the government has no evidence of that. I didn't see a single one of these patients. They were all seen by nurse practitioners and PAs who worked in my clinics. So I didn't even do the coding in the billing.
It's just unbelievable.
Like, it's just,
let's talk about.
Okay, sorry.
I'm sorry. Go finish your thought.
I was just going to say, to make it even worse, the American Medical Association wrote an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief, to the court. And what's striking about that is that they're the ones that write the rules that the government is saying I broke. And they said he didn't break any of these rules.
Wow. That is so incredibly powerful. Is that what created was that what allowed the first judge to say you have to acquit you on this? And then when did he turn over? When did this amicus brief get presented is, I guess, the question.
So the amicus brief, that one was written for the Fourth Circuit. So that was after the government, literally as they're packing their bags, the Biden DOJ decided to appeal. As they're boxing up their offices on their way out the door before the inauguration, they're like, let's stick it to this guy one more time and we're just going to appeal this, you know. And to your point, like, this is the judge's opinion right here. I have it. It's 93 pages.
Right.
And I mean, it is very detailed. And I mean, he said things like the government did not carry its burden and no reasonable jury could have so concluded. That's a pretty telling thing for him to say.
Big statement.
Yeah. The evidence weighs so heavily in favor of the defendant that it would be unjust to enter judgment against him. There can, of course, be no crimes if the defendant complied with those rules. I mean, like, this is the chief judge of Maryland. It's not some random guy, and it's not my opinion. It's right here in black and white.
So what was it like sitting, if you're looking over the jury box, what happened during that jury trial? Were there any sort of expressions on their faces that looked like they even understood what was going on? First of all, do you think the jury, first of all, comprehended the facts of the case? Let's start there.
Well, no, I don't. And I'll tell you, so to your point, like the way the government, so to prosecute a crime, they have to prove two elements. They have to prove that you had criminal intent, and they have to prove that there was an actual crime called falsity. So to prove my criminal intent, so to speak, they just threw up tax returns. And they said, look at how much money he made. And it really wasn't that much money. But we saw, I mean, I literally lived off my phone, for 2 years. And I never saw my family. I was constantly on, I was busting my butt every single day. Like there's nothing wrong with making some money when you're trying to help people and do the right thing.
Absolutely.
But that was their criminal intent. He must be a criminal because he made money. Like that is just such warped logic and so anti-American. And then everything that they used to say that he's a criminal just got completely obliterated. So at the closing, and I just to this day do not understand why the government gets to go last, because they're the ones charging you with the crime. You should get to go last, but
that's right.
They get to go last. And they said two things. The prosecutor gets up there and he says, jurors, you may be asking yourself, what the appropriate level of coding should have been. And by the way, just so people understand this, there are over 69,000 ICD-10 codes. Okay. Mm-hmm. They're coming after me because they said we chose the wrong code. And they never said why.
For five people out of 100,000?
And the difference between what we were billing, and just to make it worse, Ann, the difference between what we were billing as a level 4, which I had a perfectly reasonable rationale for it, but nobody ever asked for that. Nobody said, well, could you explain yourself? The difference between a level 4 and a level 3 on average is about $50 per patient. So they're looking to throw me in jail for 50 years. God knows how many millions of dollars in restitution, over $250. So anyway, the prosecutor's up there and he says, you may be asking yourself what the appropriate level is. Is it a level 4? Is it a level 3? The good news, jurors, is you don't need to know. You just need to know he's wrong and he's a criminal. And then, even more crazy, they get up there and they say, well, the defense got up here and they had an expert testify and they showed you all these charts and these rules. They're just trying to confuse you. Use your common sense, jurors. Does any of what they said make common sense? And you know what? They were right, because no, of course it doesn't make common sense. But to your point earlier about filing taxes, that doesn't make any sense either, right? The IRS code is ridiculous. But you can't call the IRS and say, hey, I filed my taxes based on my common sense. They have very strict rules. And the government writes these rules. And now they want us to just throw them out and say we're not going to follow them because the prosecutors think that they're wrong. Like, what world does this make sense in?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. By the way, Michael Castellero says hello. He's on Facebook watching right now.
I just talked to him this morning. On my way to the gym, I talked to him.
Yeah. I think he can completely, he empathizes with this because this is exactly what's going on with their case in the Straight Path Ventures case. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I've got to put
I know.
I'm going to put a piece out, follow up on what's going there because I've been staying on top of that. But so let's get now to the Fourth Circuit. They've reinstated the possibility of a conviction. They're saying the jury could reasonably interpret the evidence differently, and they're calling the case close. Let's go through that gray zone. I mean, how are they going to convince us to? How do you think the jury's actually going to take this as a valid argument?
Well, so first of all, they made a number of factual errors, which I'm just mystified by. Like the judges just wrote things that are not true because the government said it, and they just took it at face value. And I said to my lawyers, I'm like, how is this possible? And they're like, it's just how it is. But more strikingly, what they said in the Fourth Circuit opinion was that Dr. Elfenbein's, and both the district court, by the way, and the Fourth Circuit have said the same thing. Dr. Elfenbein's interpretation of the coding guidelines was, quote, reasonable. But yet the government's still free to come after you criminally and throw you in jail. Despite the fact, to your point, that this is a gray area, it's ambiguous, and there's a lot of we're not really sure, it doesn't make any sense. But they can still come after you criminally, not civilly, criminally, even though what you did was reasonable. Once again, back to my IRS analogy, that would be like you or me filing taxes and doing it through my accountant and everything right, and then the IRS coming back after me 3 years later and saying, you know what you did was very reasonable, but we disagree, so we're gonna charge you with the crime. I mean, like, again, in what universe does this make any sense?
It doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. Do you think that ambiguous regulations should carry criminal penalties? I mean, because
Well,
like you said, the ICD-10 codes, 65,000. I used to be a farmer rep a long time ago. So I was ICD-9. That was back to ICD-9, but the ICD-10 is so 65,000 codes. It's like the IRS. My God, the book is, this thick. It's easy to say, well, is it this or is it that? Should I file it this way? It is not clear. In fact, like I said on the open, I've got Joe Bannister, who's a former criminal investigator for the IRS, hasn't paid taxes in 30 years himself. Same with Payman Madahetu from Freedom Law School. Same thing, 30 years. I tell people you're stupid if you're filing as an individual. Corporations, yes, you pay taxes. People don't. And, you just don't opt in. You don't sign that 1040. You just don't opt into the system. You're giving yourself, you're tying yourself to them for no good reason. You're donating your money. And so, these ambiguous regulations, when you decide to sign in and go, okay, I'm going to be a taxpayer. Now you've got to go figure out, well, I made 100,000 last year. So what exactly, what does this mean? And now you're going to go pay somebody, $4,000 to do your taxes, right? So now you're down to 96,000 after all your expenses. You have 3 kids, whatever it is, you're now on the poverty level and you still are at the mercy of them because they say you picked the wrong code. Like I call BS on that.
I mean, look, there's so many things wrong with my case that are just so egregious that you got to ask yourself, what's going on here? And I think it's clear that it's not about coding. That's just ostensibly the reason they came after me. But to your point, sure, the government should be able to come after people for egregious violations of, like, a perfect example. There was a guy who, and I've only learned about this because of what I've been going through. So my lawyers, send me updates and things like that. And I read a case of a guy a doctor who was clearly billing for services that were not being provided and billing at a way too high a level. And he knew there was evidence that he actually knew what he was doing was wrong. But by the way, if let's say I determined early on that I thought the level 4 was the correct billing code. If I had said to them, I believe it's my staff, I believe it's a level 4, but I think you should bill a level 3, that's a crime too. Undercoding is also a crime. So like, again, what am I supposed to do? Right? It's like the speed limit is 50. If you go over 50, you're screwed. If you go under 50, you're screwed. And if you go 50, you're screwed. What are you supposed to do? But again, this is so stupid and so crazy of a case that there must be something more to it. And I am trying to get in touch with somebody in the Trump administration that will just look at this objectively and say, number one, is this a reasonable case? But it's already been adjudicated. They already spent millions of dollars. They've already taken me to trial and they lost. And then number two, like, is this a good use of taxpayer dollars? Like, what are they doing?
It isn't. That's right. None of the money the government spends is a good use of taxpayer dollars. I've yet to find something that is a good use of taxpayer dollars. And I look at the systems all the time, all the agencies, and I run a foundation where we're literally, going to defund and defang CPS nationally and at the state level. Because, I mean, we've studied this. We've written books on it, CPS pipeline. We've done movies on it. And again, this is the same playbook around every single agency. The agencies protect the big wheels of the industry. You are a cog in the wheel to make money for pharma and to make money for other things. But more importantly, you got into it to what? Save lives. And now you're being completely oppressed by a system that's only worried about making sure that the pharmaceutical industry makes a boatload of money and you're expendable. And when you go against that system, they come after you. 5 patients out of 100,000, and they are claiming you made a coding error, and it's a $250 mistake, and they want to throw you in prison for 50 years. This is what we've come down to as a country.
And it wasn't even a mistake. I would argue that I'm right. And we had 2 coding experts testify.
Great, you're right. Even better. Yeah.
And another one testify or write a letter to the DOJ, who, by the way, trains the Department of Justice to find fraud, and said there's no fraud here. This coding is correct. But to your point, Ann, I would argue that I just learned this recently. I was out there just beating the drum about how wonderful the monoclonal antibodies were, because they were. They saved people's lives. Right. They are I think the greatest thing in terms of mitigating COVID that we had. We had a few things in our armamentarium, and vaccines were one of them. And I don't want to get into the vaccine issue, but the mantra was vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate. That's all they would want to talk about. I was out there saying, well, we have this wonderful solution that will cure people. We should be using it. And I learned this from Secretary Kennedy. He was on a number of podcasts. I did not know this, but by saying that there is an alternative, that puts the emergency use authorization, there's a federal law that says this, of the vaccine in direct risk. It would have
That's
lost.
right.
That's why they had to beat down hydroxychloroquine. That's why they had
That's
to beat
right.
down ivermectin. And that's why I think they came after me. Because what I said was, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread as far as COVID is concerned, and it will save lives. That puts the EUA of the vaccine in direct risk. They could not have that, so they had to come after me. And guess what happened a few months later? Each one of those monoclonal antibodies began to lose its emergency use authorization. They pulled them off the market.
Mm-hmm. There you go. So
Yeah.
what do you think, does this create kind of a chilling effect for physicians?
Oh, I mean, I don't think there's any question. So two things. One, don't speak up, right? Don't say a
Right.
word. Just toe the party line. And two, don't step up when there's a pandemic. Don't help out. Don't do the right thing. Don't try to save people's lives. I mean, I could have just as easily sat at home and been with my family. I didn't see my kids I have 4 of them. I didn't see them for 2 years because I was working so hard. I could have easily not have done any of that. But I didn't. I did the right thing. I stepped up and I did what I thought was right. And this sends a message for the next time there's a pandemic. Hey, doc, you stay home. Don't speak out and don't do the right thing. Like, why would
That's
anybody
right.
in their right mind put themselves in my position when they can come after you for this BS nonsense retroactively and completely destroy your life? And not even have the
But
courtesy, by the way, of picking up the phone and saying, hey, there's some irregularities here. Can we discuss this? That's what a reasonable human being would do, right? But the government's not reasonable.
no, no. When they decide they want a scalp, they're going to take a scalp. Show me the man, we'll find the crime. And from
Yes.
where I'm sitting, I think this has a massive impact on what emergency room physicians and decision-making processes would be in a term of a crisis. I mean, I just looked at the ERs during the peak of COVID, and the first thing they were doing was, oh, the CDC says we're going to put you on remdesivir. You're in here, you're sick. We shut your kidneys down. We fill up your lungs with fluid. We stick a tube down your throat and blow bubbles in your lungs, and you drown. I mean, that's
Yeah.
basically what
Yeah.
they did. They turned you into an aquarium. It was really disgusting. I mean, we lost a
Yeah.
lot of people that way. I'm not trying to make light of the situation. I protested. I went to hospitals and spoke in their public comment sections up here in Sarasota Memorial Hospital. I certainly didn't make any friends in that hospital, at least from the administrative side. But this is going to have an impact on future health responses. What do you think it's going to look like in the future if we don't figure this out?
I think people aren't going to step up. They're not going to do the right thing. They're not going to speak out. I mean, look, your First Amendment right doesn't exist to pat, the government on the back. It exists for you
Right.
to have disagreement. And that's good.
Right.
It's to your point, everybody stay home. This was the mantra: stay home until you turn blue and then go to the hospital. Well, that's the dumbest thing in the
Right.
world, right? But that's what they were telling us. And again, to your point, like the monoclonals, the reason we became the largest supplier in the state of Maryland wasn't because I'm some magician or I'm this great business mind. It's because the government made it so difficult to get access to that medicine that nobody was prescribing it. So I will tell you exactly what that means. As an ER doctor, if you came and saw me in the emergency room and I said, Ann, you have COVID, I just tested you, and you're really sick and you meet the criteria, I think you should get the monoclonal antibodies. Here's what we're going to do. I have to go into some government website. I have to fill out 3 or 4 pages, I can't remember, of paperwork. It's going to take me probably 20 to 40 minutes per person to do that. Then I have to
Right.
print it, fax it to some number in the hopes that they'll call you and schedule it. Well,
Mhm.
nobody's doing that because no one's getting paid to do it. And everybody's so
Right.
overwhelmed and so busy. It just didn't happen. So you have this
Right.
life-saving medicine that they just pushed out because nobody could get it. So I said,
That's right.
we're going to set up a call center. So I hired people. I put them, they could do it from home. We gave them phones. I trained them what to say. I came up with a list of questions and answers to qualify patients. And then I went to all the ERs and all the primary care offices. And I said, don't worry about these stupid forms. Have the patient call us directly. We'll take care of everything. And all of a
Good.
sudden, we became bigger than Hopkins, bigger than University of Maryland. We were the largest in the state of Maryland, probably the largest in the entire Chesapeake region because of that. And I would have built 10 more centers if I could have to save 100,000 more people. But I just couldn't find the staff and I couldn't find the facilities.
Yeah, and I dare say you're still going to be able to do that today. I mean, we're in a desperate situation. On Facebook, Deborah Ann Coleman says my brother had COVID last year and they wanted to put him on remdesivir. I told him absolutely not, but yet they would not give him ivermectin because it wasn't their protocol. I am a nurse and I had to stay by his bed the whole time. They tried like heck to kill him, and I was up their butts for a month while he was there. That story, Deborah, is so freaking common. I mean, we did medical rescues. I work with a number of physicians, including Richard Bartlett at one point. and Dr. Zelenko and others to get people out of the hospital setting because it was so atrocious, absolutely atrocious, because they weren't able to get monoclonal or they were denied hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. Unbelievable.
Thank God for your advocacy, Deborah, because, absolutely. And most people, unfortunately, didn't have a Deborah by their bedside. And I'll give you an example of ivermectin. So I tried to write for it during COVID for a bunch of patients. And for the first time, I've been an emergency room doctor. I finished my residency at Johns Hopkins in 2003. So I've been a doctor practicing emergency medicine since 2000. Okay, so it's 26 years. Never in my entire career, ever, have I had a pharmacy call me and say, what is the ICD-10 code for this medicine that you're writing? Why are you writing for this medicine? Every time I wrote for ivermectin, every time I would get a call from a pharmacy, and it didn't matter which pharmacy, Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, it didn't matter. The pharmacist would call me and say, I need the ICD-10 code associated with this patient for this visit. I said, no, you don't. That's none of your business. Your job is to fill the prescription and talk to the patient about the medication. My job is to assess what they need. And they would not fill it because they knew I was writing for it for COVID. I have never seen that happen before in my entire career. And I've written for all kinds of medicines. Sure.
As a pharma rep, we had off-label applications all the time. We spoke to doctors about, say, oh, by the way, this particular drug, what was it? It was it was the osteoporotic medicine that I sold. Like, it's just what the name of it went right out of my head, but it had a very good profile for ER positive breast cancer, 84% reduction in estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. Evicta, what was it called? Evista. I remembered it. Raloxifene, Evista. Very good profile for reducing estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. Most physicians I knew were writing it for that reason, especially the OB-GYNs. They were writing it for that reason. So this whole thing is so ridiculous. It's like home remedies, homeopathy, all the stuff before Big Pharma, before the Flexner Report, before Rockefeller medicine in the early 1900s, before all of that. We used a lot of what God put on the planet. And you were not allowed to talk about that. You could make hydroxychloroquine with citrus fruit. So this whole thing is just so sideways. And I feel terrible for what you've been through, but what a learning experience. And I think this is sort of I think you are literally one of the missiles that is creating chinches in the armor in this entire system. And you're at this point, you can't turn around now. You've got to keep going because you're driving a public awareness campaign here.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm trying. I think the one silver lining for me is that, yes, I do believe that there's some truth to what you just said. And then the other thing is that I have just honestly met some of the nicest and most wonderful people that I never would have met. I would have no reason to have met aside from this experience, which has been the worst experience of my life, by the way. But beyond that, like, the positive side is that I've met some wonderful people. And I do believe that the Trump administration is trying to right the wrongs of the prior administration. I mean, we'll see. And I realize I just
where do you think the holdup is right now? I've seen Secretary Kennedy now has his own podcast, and it seems like he's kind of going on almost a scorched earth fashion. He's going to start naming names. I haven't watched the last few. I got to go get caught up here. But what I did see him launch was like, this is not sounding like he's trying to stay muzzled. And it's almost as if he's taking the muzzle off. Do you think the amount of red tape caught up in these agencies is what's really making it difficult to unwind everything? I mean, shouldn't the president just be able to say, we're firing everybody over at the CDC, the FDA, and we're going to start over? I mean, I don't know.
So I think your question is spot on as usual, and it's just a brilliant question. I firmly believe that changing culture and changing the innards of any organization, any large organization, is incredibly difficult, and government is nearly impossible. So it's like a Sisyphean task. And I think that the president's behind him 100%. Maha's behind him 100%. I'm behind him 100%. Like, I'm sure you're behind him 100%. But there's all these obstacles in his way and the only way to make it happen is to do what he's doing, that's exactly what I'm doing too, is to go public and let the public know and just create outrage. And people are like, I can't believe that this is really true. And I think he's very smart to do that, because I think that's his last option, because otherwise he's just going to get shut down by the swamp. They just gnaw at you at your ankles and your feet, and they just keep pulling and pulling and pulling, and you just get dragged down and bogged down in this morass. And I think a perfect example is my case, right? The president issued a directive on day one of his term saying we're ending the weaponization, and then a month later, former Attorney General Bondi issues this statement that says we're creating a task force to find weaponization. My case is the perfect example for that. But
But the
yet I just
DOJ stopped the task force. Remember that Ed Martin was removed by Todd Blanche. Who
removed.
needs to be fired? He needs to be removed.
Right. So I don't think the right hand is talking to the left hand, and it's like this bureaucratic morass, and
Yeah,
it's just a nightmare. I don't know how else to
it
say
it
it.
it it, it is a nightmare. I just want to pull this podcast over to the side of the road here and just address somebody. I'll be right back with you. Hang on one second. This is what a troll looks like, guys. In case you didn't know, whoever this person is, Aryan Blitzkrieg. I mean, let's let the name speak for itself. This is the kind of nonsense that YouTube likes to deliver on my channel. Just pointing it out there, just in case anybody is not seeing it. But yeah, I had to just call that out because it's kind of ridiculous that people are just so stupid.
I mean, if I may, like that person, I don't know
Please.
anything about this person, but like they just said you're using this off label. We do that all the time. Like we
Exactly.
use medications off label all the time, and it is allowed, by the way, and it's encouraged. If there's data that supports it, the FDA encourages it. So like, I don't even know what that person's talking about. That's a crazy thing for somebody to say, because off-label medicines, it's something that every doctor and every nurse practitioner and every PA does on a daily basis.
That's right. That's right. Deborah says, I'm living proof it works. She knows. I mean, look, I just had to call out a troll because they're in there. So I just, every now and then you got to put them on blast. All right. What happens next, Dr. Ron? Let's talk about the timeline for this retrial. What's at stake for you personally, professionally, and how can people follow and support you?
So I am facing a new trial, a second criminal trial in August. And the judge, by the way, the judge, I didn't mention this before, but the judge who wrote that very courageous 93-page opinion was supposed to be adjudicating my new trial. But a couple months ago, we get a one-line email from him that just says, I am recusing myself from this case. And I would say that that's a very curious turn of events that really doesn't make any sense. But I think that he's so angry over what happened and the fact that they're still coming after me that he just doesn't feel like he can be in any way, shape, or form objective. I don't know that for a fact. I've never talked to the man other than in court, but I mean, that's my take. Anyway, so I face a new trial in August and more legal bills, more nightmarish, lack of sleep. I mean, this has just been a nightmare completely beyond anyone's imagination. I have 4 kids and it's been a nightmare for them too. My wife's a physician. She treats children with cancer.
Oh my gosh.
It's just, I mean, so we're not awful people. We're good people. We try to do the right thing. We try to take care of, we have all 4 of my kids are like good students. They were all straight A students and very well adjusted, lots of friends, and they all had to go into therapy except my youngest because he was 3 at the time when this happened. He had no idea what was going on. And to this day, thankfully, he's 7 now. He still doesn't know what's going on. But it's not just me that this has affected. It's my whole family. And it's just going to be more affect us even more. So I'm trying to find, again, that person in the Trump administration that can help. But people can follow me on X. I would invite them to, please, Ron Elfenbein, MD. People can go to my website, ronelfenbein.com. I also have another website, it's dropthecase.com, where there's a whole timeline. There's a lot of more information on that website. I do have a GoFundMe, but I also have a Give, Send, Go, which is what I would encourage people to use, not the GoFundMe. And
I have the GoFundMe up. What is your Give, Send, Go?
I honestly, I don't. It's on my website. I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's
That's
on the
okay.
ronelfenbein.com website.
I'm gonna find it.
I'm sorry,
I've got
I
it
should
right
know
here.
that off the top of my head. But
No,
the
that's
URL
okay.
is
No,
like
no,
some
no, no.
crazy.
It's okay. I got it right here. I found it. I just want to put it up there because I do.
Thank you.
Oh, that's
So
your
if
Give,
people
Send,
can,
Go.
if people can give,
Sorry.
I would appreciate it because this has just been, I mean, it nearly bankrupted us, and now we're facing double that. And I have to give a shout out to my lawyers. They have been very wonderful and magnanimous, and most lawyers would not do that, but they said, look, we believe you're innocent. We know you're innocent. We're going to stand with you and just pass what you can when you can. And that's, I paid them every single month. I haven't missed a month. I just paid them whatever I can afford. And so far, so good. They've been good with that. And so I want to give them a shout out. But there's also,
this has been a legal nightmare for how long? Have you been in this legal nightmare, Ron?
Since 2022. April of 2022.
So 4 years.
Now 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand just how incredibly expensive it is to be in a legal battle for 4 years, particularly when you're fighting the federal government. It's you against the United States. I know the goal here is $250,000. that's probably not even going to cover your legal expenses, would be my guess at the size and the scope of what they've done here, that you're
Oh,
going into a third trial.
It's in the millions of money that I
Right.
don't have. And I just want to point that out to your point, Ann, like right here, it says United States of America versus Ron Elfenbein. And like, just
Right.
imagine your name there, right? That is the
Yeah.
most daunting thing on the planet. The government of the United States, and they show all these, these seals of the DOJ and the DOD and all these seals. They look official and they scare the crap out of you. And they know that they can do that because that's exactly what happens. They scare the crap out of you. And then they threaten you with 50 years in jail and millions of dollars in fines. And they make you come to the table because of that. And I refuse to go to the table because I did nothing wrong. And I'm like, I'm not going to kowtow to you and end up losing my medical license anyway, and go to jail regardless. If I pled, I still would have gone to jail, for something I didn't do. Like, this is totally un-American and it's totally unfair.
That's right. That's right.
So if people can give, I would very much appreciate it, because this has just been, to your point, incredibly expensive. And then there's also a change.org I have where people can, it's free. You can just click and it generates a note to the DOJ that we can show that there's some support behind him. And it's, there's a lot of people, and I'm very active on X. So please follow me on X and repost everything. And I do want to make a point, and that is that you never know who's listening. And I mean that wholeheartedly, because I was on with Dr. Bowden on her podcast, Mary Bowden. And
Mary Talley Bowden,
a week later, I get a phone call, and it was a United States senator, just called my cell phone. And he said, I saw your podcast and I want to help you. And I was in his office a week later. I live in Maryland. He's in DC. It's, 40 minutes away. I drove into DC and I met with him in his office for an hour. So you just never know who's listening. So the more that you can spread this kind of stuff, the better, because like, important people do listen. They get their news from people like Ann, because you can't trust the news media anymore. So alternative media is where it's at. And
that's right.
Please.
Well, we're the people's media. We are doing the bidding for the people. We are representing the people, just like me, just like you, just like people watching. And I think people know me now, that I rail against this corrupt agency government every single day. I can't stop myself, because it's just so in your face. And this is yet another glaring example. You are another glaring example of this government that is absolutely abusing the people, because they can do it. They can just pick fights. They're the bully in the schoolyard that, saw you playing dodgeball and came up and then just picked you out of the lineup and just continually wailed on you every single day. You see it. I mean, everybody listening to that remembers that day in fifth grade when it happened to them. Or they remember the kid next to him that was the kid that got picked on by the bully. And you always try to, it's time we take the bully out, and that's the federal government. And I'm all for just completely altering and abolishing, like our founding fathers stated in our Declaration of Independence. We are at that moment. And as I said, yesterday was April 15th. I laugh. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. People are going to pay taxes today. I'm so sorry. Like, this is stupid. Like, let's cut the head of the snake off here, people. We have that right to do it. And I think we should.
I would agree with you 100%. They are just tremendous bullies. And I always joke around with my friends that it's like these people that got the crap beat out of them on the playground are now taking it out on people who are good, honest people, because they got beaten up as a child and now they feel like they have to take it out on somebody. And I will give you an example. There was a guy his name was Ken Polite, and he appeared on my indictment, and he appeared on all my paperwork, and he was in the Biden DOJ. He's now out of the Department of Justice, but he was also named by Jim Jordan as somebody who went after all those Congress people's cell phone records. So like, there's a trail of corruption here. And I would say that is one example of somebody who, look, I don't know what Jim Jordan has or what doesn't have. I haven't talked to Representative Jordan, but he specifically named him. And I saw that, oh my God, he's on all my paperwork too. So I don't know if there's a connection there, but it certainly seems like it.
In sort of closing, Dr. Ron, if you were asked to be tasked to help revamp this system to make, for instance, coding, is that something you would want to be on a task force? Because that sounds to me like you're dealing with the IRS. The coding itself sounds so ridiculous. It sounds like there's probably so many codes that nobody ever uses, but they're there to confuse.
100%. I would jump at a chance to do that, because the system is ridiculous and it is confusing and it is ambiguous, as the Judge Berdar said, as the Fourth Circuit said. And I mean, I don't think that you'd ever find anybody involved in medicine, a doctor, a nurse, a coding expert, who would tell you it's not confusing and ambiguous. And there's no reason it has to be. Like there's better ways to do this. And I would jump at a chance to be involved in something like that to make the system better, because it is a messed up system. And when they can come after people for nonsense like this, to your point before, Ann, about repercussions, I have a dear friend of mine in Connecticut. He's a plastic surgeon, and he doesn't take insurance anymore. He used to, but he stopped taking it because he's like, this is just too crazy. The only insurance he took was Medicare, because he felt an obligation to help elderly people who needed help. And he said to me, he's like, I lose money on all of these patients that I see. It costs me more to see them and to treat them and to follow-ups and all the rest of that. But I do it because it makes me feel good and I think I'm doing the right thing. After what happened to me, he dropped Medicare like a hot potato. He's like, I am never going to touch this again. I want nothing to do with any of this. That's what's coming. And that only hurts people who rely on Medicare. That's the only people who are going to get screwed by all this, the people who need access to care. All these things that the government does just limits access to care. And it hurts the people who can't afford it. People who have money can always afford it, but the people who don't have any money and rely on Medicare or Medicaid are getting screwed, and they're going to continue to get screwed, and it's just going to get worse.
Well, there's doctors out there that are starting things, and they're, Dr. Simone Gold, for instance, she's got Gold Care. She's got insurance stuff coming. I mean, there's doctors that are doing things all over the place. You've got Dr. Mackus opening the cancer clinics. He's down here in Sarasota now, I think. The doctors that are in it for the right reason, like yourself, Dr. Ron, are creating opportunities to help the public, despite of the fact that the government overlords, and that's what they are, they're government overlords, are destroying the very system that they say is supposed to help the people. They're creating the exact opposite effect. That has been, my father used to say that to me as when I was a child growing up. You'll always get the exact opposite impact of what their intended expressed idea was. And that's exactly what we see. All these agency names, you get the opposite. The agencies protect the industries, not the people. And you are one of we the people that has decided to do a service. You are doing a public service for these people because you're taking care of them at a time when the government was trying to make it incredibly difficult and painful for everybody. So thank you for everything you do. And we're going to follow this case closely, Dr. Ron, because I feel a kindred spirit here with you, and you see the bigger picture.
Thank you.
And we need to solve that problem, and I want my audience, please, $5, $10, whatever you can, please, by all means, get on over to his Give, Send, Go and do share what you can with them, because this is important. We do have to stand up for the people that, are standing up for us. And you are one of those people. You're taking on the Goliath. You're the David in this fight. And for that, we're incredibly, grateful for that. And honestly, millions of dollars in legal fees, and you're just trying to collect 250,000 of it is really, to me, not a big deal. And everybody, if we had, we have 20,000 people put in $5. No, is that right? How's my math? 250,000 divided by 5.
That'd be 100,000. But
100,000.
You're close. It's okay.
If 100,000 people put in $5, sorry, this wouldn't be a big deal, right? So let's get this going, guys. This is not difficult. It really isn't difficult.
You, Ann. Thanks for
Dr. Ron. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Appreciate you. Have a great day, and please get back to your patients.
Thank you.
All right, folks, yet again, I don't even know how to tell you, another glaring example of how this government is just going to continue to destroy the very system that they say they're trying to affect and to help. It's all through regulation. It's all through BS. It's all through red tape. It's absolutely, it's disgusting. It's so incredibly harmful. And guess who's making the money? The judges in the system, the Department of Justice, the court systems. We, the people, are getting raped by these animals, these criminals, the district of corruption. It's disgusting. And, a shout out to Dr. Ron, to my friends, to Brian Martinson, Fran Lanaya, Michael Castellera, people I never knew, but now I consider friends because I'm watching what they have gone through and what this government is doing to people like that made other people millions of dollars in an IPO investment firm. Dr. Ron saving hundreds of thousands of lives, helping people through COVID, which was a manufactured government crisis. I think we all know that now. But again, we didn't know what we didn't know, and we're trying to help in a system that is being rigged against us every single day. So, I opened up talking about yesterday being tax day. I was traveling. We were working with some of our donors for some of the work we're doing with the foundation, and got some big news we're going to be talking about here in the probably next couple of months. Very exciting stuff we're doing. And it's because people are sick and tired of the system, and we want to operate outside it. And I stepped outside of the system years ago. Those of you that have followed me for a long time know I became an American national. I'm not part of this US citizen corporation because I don't want to be. I don't want to be funding stuff that doesn't interest what my interests are. And I'm proud of that. And a lot of people took the same cue. And so, again, there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, and you're going to continue to follow me and you'll learn all about it. In the meantime, you guys have a great day. Thanks so much for everything you're doing. And we'll catch you again here next time on Steel News. Goodbye, everybody.
Food security or food sovereignty. Every time we buy food, we choose. Glyphosate exposure is exploding, and people are asking, why is food so expensive? This is why we do what we do. Organic fields, thriving orchards, the purest ingredients straight from the earth. From our farms to your family, we do the testing so you don't have to. You save time, you save money, and our regenerative farms continue to grow. It's time to remove what does not belong. Rebuild with cleaner inputs. Support the farmers with the future in mind. This isn't a trend, it's a shift. We still have a voice. We still have a choice to vote with our dollars for a healthier America today. Tap the link.
Are you ready to take your health back? At VandersteelHealth.com, I trust Purium's powerful superfoods to fuel my body with clean, plant-based nutrition. And in a world filled with toxins, Biomedic is designed to help support your body's natural detox process, even from glyphosate exposure. Real nutrition, targeted support, no junk. Go to VandersteelHealth.com and take control of your health today. We should be